The water was still running when she said it. "If you want to come visit me, you'll wash the dishes first." Kaya didn't laugh. She didn't even look up from her phone. She just dropped it there like it was a normal thing to say to someone standing at the sink with wrinkled hands and soap on their sleeves. Evan chuckled. Not a big laugh, just that awkward low sound he makes when he knows Kaya's crossed a line, but won't dare say it. I didn't look at either of them. My hand kept scrubbing the same plate in circles until the motion felt absurd. The sponge slipped, clattered into the basin. I turned off the faucet. "Excuse me," I said, keeping my tone level. "I need the restroom." I left the kitchen. Walked down the hallway. I knew by heart the one I painted when they first bought this house. The beige trim I'd touched up before the baby shower still looked fresh. I stepped into the guest bathroom, shut the door, and sat on the closed toilet seat. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink for a long while. My reflection in the mirror was flat. A woman in her 60s who looked older than she had this morning. My sleeves were wet. My back ached. I had peeled vegetables, set the table, cleaned the stove after Kaya burned the cranberry glaze. Not once had I sat down. And she still thought I came here for food, for company, for approval. No. I came because I thought I was wanted. I thought I mattered. I opened my purse on my lap and pulled out my phone. The airline app was still on my home screen. I hadn't used it since the funeral. I tapped and searched for flights. One way. Departure tomorrow morning. Destination Phoenix. I confirmed the booking before I even flushed. Back in the hallway, I slipped on my coat. My keys were already in my hand. I told Evan I wasn't feeling well, that I'd call in the morning. Kaya didn't look up. Outside, the cold air snapped at my cheeks. I walked to my car, turned the engine, and watched the porch light dim behind me. I left before sunrise. The house was still dark, quiet, the kind of stillness that used to feel comforting. This time, it felt like vacancy. I didn't leave a note. I didn't leave food in the fridge. I didn't even rinse the last coffee cup, just set it on the counter still half full. The dish towel on the sink was damp, twisted, the way my hands had left it the night before. At the airport, I didn't check a bag. One carry-on, one coat. I told the airline agent I didn't need a return flight. She didn't ask why. As the plane lifted off, I looked out at the frost-covered roofs and wondered how long it would take them to notice I was gone. Would Kaya assume I was being dramatic? Would Evan pretend he didn't understand? I had spent years smoothing things over for them. Babysitting, last minute. Driving 3 hours to watch their kids for a weekend emergency. Signing a check when they said they were short on the car loan. Helping repaint their kitchen cabinets because Kaya didn't like the blue even though I had picked it. And still, I was disposable. A convenience. Never once the guest. Always the support staff. When Evan bought the house, I sent them a check for $10,000. A gift, I called it. He had hugged me that day, tight, real. I hadn't felt that kind of closeness since he was a teenager. I clung to it for years, like it still meant something. Like it still existed beneath the silence. But it didn't. Somewhere between the holidays and hospital visits, I became background noise. Useful when needed. Forgotten when not. The plane hit light turbulence. The woman next to me gripped her armrest, startled. I didn't flinch. I was used to bumps. By the time we landed in Phoenix, the sun was high, bright enough to make me squint. I didn't feel lighter. Not yet, but I felt distant. And for now, distance was enough. At baggage claim, I sat on a bench and texted one person, my attorney. The folder was still in my bag, zipped between sweaters and shoes. The rental was plain, but it was mine for the month. No clutter. No framed family photos watching me from the walls. No noise except the ceiling fan clicking in time with my breath. I unpacked slowly, one sweater at a time, not because I had many things, but because I didn't know what came next. I had run, but I hadn't planned the landing. At the bottom of my suitcase was the folder. My husband called it our peace binder. He had labeled it in bold black ink before his second heart procedure. Just in case, he said, but he was always the one prepared. I had never wanted to open it without him sitting beside me. I made coffee first. 1 cup. No second mug. No one to ask if they wanted cream. I sat at the dining table and opened the binder like I was unsealing a confession. The first page was our will. My name, his name, and then Evan's, printed neatly in section 3. Kaya had been added later, after the wedding. I remember the conversation brief, unemotional. It's just paperwork, my husband had said. It keeps things simple. But I remembered how tightly Kaya smiled when she signed the witness copy. How quickly she had tucked it into her purse before I even had a chance to reread it. Next came the house deed. My name alone now. Then the trust documents. There it was again, Evan's name. Kaya's name. The default assumption that family meant automatic inclusion. My pen hesitated over that clause. I pulled out a yellow highlighter and marked the lines that mentioned successor trustees, beneficiaries, and contingent designations. I didn't make a decision, not yet, but I needed to see clearly. I needed to remind myself who had been written in by love and who had simply been inserted by habit. I closed the folder and sat back in my chair. The coffee had gone lukewarm. I finished it anyway. Outside, a car drove by. No one I knew. No one expecting me. For the first time in years, I was a woman without a task. The next morning, a text came through. From Kaya. The text came in at 10:17 a.m. Are you seriously not coming? No hello? No, are you okay? Just that sharp, flat question, saturated with annoyance, not worry. I stared at the screen for a long time before locking it without replying. My phone made a small thud on the table when I set it down. I sipped my coffee slowly and watched the steam drift sideways. Part of me expected a second message, a call, even a follow-up from Evan. Nothing came. Just that one little jab, like I'd inconvenienced her holiday by removing myself. By noon, I couldn't sit still. I pulled on my coat and walked toward the strip of shops near the rental. It wasn't cold like back home, but I kept my hands in my pockets anyway. I passed 2 cafes, a closed gallery, and a dusty florist before spotting the bookstore. Inside, the air smelled like old paper and forgotten time. I wandered without purpose until my fingers landed on a novel I had meant to read 5 years ago. I bought it without opening the cover. Back on the sidewalk, I didn't head home. I kept walking until I found a small beige building with a notary public sign half hanging from a window. Inside, the receptionist asked if I needed a signature witnessed. I said no, just a notary seal and a quiet corner. She pointed me to a side room with a metal table and a pen tethered to a chain. I pulled out the peace binder, flipped to the trust page, and marked a sticky note with 2 words, revise order. Then I called my attorney back in Oregon. Her voicemail picked up. This is Marlon Rusk, I said. I'm requesting a formal review of my trust documents. Please call me back. I hung up before I could second guess myself. Back at the rental, I sat with the book in my lap, but didn't open it. I stared at the unopened message on my phone. I knew Kaya wasn't waiting for me. She was waiting to feel in control again. I left the phone on silent and went to make another cup of coffee. I didn't plan to write it all down. It just happened, one bullet point at a time, scratched into the margin of a grocery list I'd started and abandoned on the kitchen counter. I sat down with a fresh sheet of paper and began again. Not because I needed proof, not because I wanted to tally up favors like debt. I just needed to see it, to know I hadn't imagined the imbalance. March 2017. Paid Evan's emergency rent when Kaya lost her job. June 2018. Canceled anniversary cruise to watch kids for 4 days. August 2019. Wired $4,000 for car repairs. Never repaid. December 2020. Sewed handmade costumes for school play. No mention at pickup. April 2021, co-signed on their kitchen remodel. Paid final bill when they fell short. January 2022, sent birthday gifts to all 3 kids. No acknowledgement. I paused and looked out the window. The sun hit the stucco walls across the street like they were made of brass. I picked up the pen again. July 2022. Babysat during their Hawaii trip. Spent my 65th birthday alone in their living room. No card. My handwriting stayed steady. That surprised me. There was no tremble, no heat in my chest. Just the quiet realization that I had never kept score, but they had never kept memory. I had been consistent, helpful, kind. And in return, I had been tolerated, managed, sometimes ignored, always expected. When my husband passed, Kaya sent a 1-line text. "We're thinking of you." That was it. No call, no visit, no flowers. The list grew longer than I expected. I didn't know how much I had given until I laid it out plainly. Until I saw the outline of a woman who had been generous to the point of erasure. I folded the page and slipped it into the peace binder behind the trust documents. Not because it was legal, but because it was real. Later that night, I walked to the mailbox and sent something small that would speak louder than anything I could say aloud. I mailed it just after noon on January 3rd. A plain, padded envelope. No return address. Just Kaya's name and their home address printed neatly across the front. Inside, I placed a single redacted copy of the trust document, the page where their names had once been circled in yellow. I blacked out everything else. On the front of the packet, I stuck a small pink note under review. No greeting. No explanation. Nothing else. I dropped it into the mailbox outside the UPS store, then walked back down the street like I'd just sent a bill. And in some way I had, not for money, but for attention, for understanding, for consequence. By dinner time, the phone rang. Twice. Both calls from Kaya. I let them go to voicemail. I didn't check them. I didn't even flinch when the screen lit up a 3rd time this time, a message. "We need to talk. You're overreacting." Overreacting. After everything I had done. After every birthday, missed every holiday, half invited every act of kindness that had been folded into silence. It was that word, overreacting, that made something inside me settle. I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I was done. I turned off the ringer and placed the phone face down. Then I poured another cup of coffee and sat on the small patio, watching the sunset drop low over the cactus line. The sky was dusted with color, rose ash pale gold. It didn't ask anything of me. For once, I didn't feel like I had to be useful to deserve the view. Inside, I lit 1 candle. Not for a vigil. Not for symbolism. Just because I liked the smell. I picked up the novel I had bought and read 5 pages without distraction. The phone didn't ring again. The quiet felt earned. Later, I opened the binder and removed the sticky note. I replaced it with a signed instruction from my attorney proceed with full amendment. In the morning, I would fax it over. For now, I watched the last of the sun fold into the dark and let the silence speak for me. The message came through at 8:42 a.m. You could have just said something. No punctuation. No apology. Just that tired phrase like the problem was my failure to speak, not their failure to listen. I stared at it for a while. Then I let the phone go dark in my hand. Evan had always known. He knew the way Kaya dismissed my cooking, rolled her eyes when I told stories, called my sweaters a little much in front of guests. He saw the way she turned away when I offered help, how she smiled too tightly when I brought gifts. And he never said a word. The worst part was I had excused it. I told myself he was caught in the middle, that he didn't want to stir the pot, that he loved us both and was trying to keep the peace. But peace that requires silence is just surrender in disguise. I remembered the Thanksgiving Kaya had asked me to bring a pie, then served a store-bought cake instead. She slid mine into the fridge without a word. I saw Evan watching from across the room. He looked right at me, then looked away. Said nothing. The Christmas she made a joke about my scarves. Maybe the kids can use them for play. I saw his mouth twitch, like he might say something. But all that came out was an awkward laugh. That laugh was permission. And when I cleared the table while Kaya sat scrolling her phone, when I folded laundry she left in the dryer when I offered to help, and got brushed off like clutter he watched. Every time. And he chose silence. So no, Evan. I didn't just say something. I said everything every year with my hands and time and money. And you heard it. You just never answered. I didn't respond to his message. Instead, I opened the envelope from my attorney that had arrived that morning. Inside, new paperwork, clean and updated. His name was gone. So was hers. That afternoon, I walked to the post office again, this time with 2 letters in hand. The office was tucked between a dentist and a tax service. Nothing grand, just a quiet place with clean carpet and no expectations. The attorney, a woman named Elise, greeted me with calm professionalism. She had kind eyes but didn't offer small talk. I appreciated that. We reviewed every page slowly. I had already done most of the emotional work in Oregon, but now it was time to make it real across state lines. Elise asked if I wanted to remove them entirely or keep some conditional language in the trust. I shook my head. No ambiguity, I said. Not this time. We rewrote the successor clause first. Then the beneficiary list. Evan's name was deleted. So was Kaya's. When she asked if I had someone else in mind, I knew exactly who. Lainey Torres, I said. My goddaughter. Elise nodded, typing quietly. I smiled. Remembering the last time I'd heard from Lainey, it was Thanksgiving 2 years ago. No gifts exchanged, no obligations. Just a phone call. She had said, I'm grateful for you, just wanted you to know. I nearly cried that day and didn't tell anyone. It felt too small to share, but now it felt big enough to honor. We added a section for a small education grant in my husband's name. Nothing extravagant, but enough to help someone thoughtful build something lasting. He would have liked that. He believed in quiet impact. I initialed every revision, every adjustment, and signed the final page without pause. Elise notarized it with a smooth stamp and slid the documents into a clean folder. You're all set, she said. And I was. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean, like I had rinsed out something that had been rotting quietly for years. On the way back to the rental, I stopped at a bakery and bought myself a warm slice of banana bread and a cappuccino. I ate at the counter by the window, people watching. No one knew who I was. No one asked what I was doing. It was the first time in a long time I ate without rushing. I paid in cash and tipped well. That evening, I boxed the original trust documents. The delivery came just after lunch. A medium-sized cardboard box taped twice across the top and labeled in my daughter-in-law's unmistakable handwriting. No return address. Just my name. I carried it to the table and sat down in front of it. I didn't open it right away. I made coffee first, as if to give the moment some kind of ceremony. When I finally pulled back the tape, it didn't hiss. It didn't snap. It just gave way like it had been waiting. Inside, a pie plate, the one with the chipped edge, the one I always used for apple. A framed photo of Evan and me at his college graduation. A baby quilt I had sewn 12 years ago, patchworked from old shirts and lined with satin binding. No note, no message. Just returned written on the shipping label. I sat for a long time and just looked at the items. Not crying, not shaking. Just seeing them for what they were, now artifacts. Things that had once held warmth and meaning and presence, now packed away like clutter. But I didn't take it as an attack. Kaya didn't send these to hurt me. She sent them because they meant nothing to her in the first place. And maybe they never had. I picked up the quilt, ran my hand over the stitching. 12 years ago, I stayed up late sewing that binding by hand. I had imagined their child curled up in it on cold nights, surrounded by something soft, something made. I folded it gently, placed it in a bag, and walked it to a nearby donation center. The woman at the desk smiled and said, "Are you sure you want to part with this?" "I'm not parting with it," I said. "I'm giving it to someone who might actually see it." Back home, I took the pie plate and slid it into the back of a cabinet. I kept the photo, not for Evan's sake, but because I wanted to remember who I was when that picture was taken, before I let them decide what my love was worth. The porch was still cool when I stepped outside with my mug. Steam curled from the coffee like breath rising slow and quiet into the morning air. No notifications, no missed calls, no half apologies, just the steady hum of life moving forward without the weight of performance. I sat with both hands around the cup and listened to the birds, to the breeze, to the small sounds that often get drowned out by trying too hard for people who never try back. Then I opened my journal, the same one I'd carried from Oregon. Its pages were worn, now filled with small reckonings and private truths. I turned to the last page and wrote, "I didn't abandon them. I stopped paying to stay." I underlined it once, then closed the cover gently. Later that afternoon, I opened my laptop and typed out one final message to my attorney. "Please add a formal clause. Only active, respectful relationships may be considered for inclusion in the estate. No names, no room for guilt later, just a clear boundary." I hit send. Then I sat back, closed the laptop, and reached for my book, the one I'd been meaning to finish for years. As I read, I didn't feel brave. I didn't feel defiant. I just felt steady, whole, like someone who finally stopped begging to be seen and started living in her own light. I poured a second cup of coffee. This time, I stayed outside until it went cold in my hands. I didn't rush to reheat it. I didn't answer the echo of their silence with any of my own. Some absences don't need filling. I had spent so many years earning my place at a table they never intended to share. And now, here on this small porch with a quiet view, I finally understood something I'd been too tired to admit before. The peace wasn't in being accepted. It was in no longer asking.